Hello, everybody. Nice to see you tonight, or tomorrow morning, or last night, wherever you are. So let's begin tonight with raising bodhicitta, the intention to be together for the benefit of all beings. Not all beings, all beings. Okay, so let's generate that thought. I think raising bodhicitta together is my favorite part. So I'm going to talk tonight about why is the sacred feminine important now. And I thought tonight, as doing something a little bit different, we could also have you write in why you think the sacred feminine is important right now, and then at the end I could read some of those. And also, if you have questions as I'm speaking, let me know and I'll answer them at the end. So I was thinking about this subject, and I remembered this moment where I think it was actually the moment that I discovered the sacred feminine. And I was in Nepal for the first time. I was 19 years old and from New Hampshire, and I grew up Unitarian, so that's my dog Tashi. So I went to church and I went to Sunday school, but we made bird feeders in Sunday school, and it was good because I didn't have a religion I had to recover from exactly, but it was also not good in the sense that I didn't really know what it meant to have a spiritual life. And so I went to Nepal at the age of 19, and that was 1967. And I escaped from the embassy. I was the guest of the American ambassador because my friend Vicky's father was the consul general in Calcutta, and so when we went to Nepal, we actually lived in the American embassy. But I really didn't want to be there. I wanted to be in Nepal. And so I escaped, and I started to live in this little town called Kimdol. And it was this little village, really, that was beneath Swayambhu Stupa, which is where I first met the Tibetans. And I was going every day for my meals to this little tea shop that was down the hill. And so there was this hill, and then I had this little kind of hut up on the hill, and then down kind of on the road was this tea shop, and it was pretty primitive. They had a fire where they'd heat the water for the tea, and they made these kind of delicious but very greasy snacks, and sometimes more than that. So I started hanging out there, and I got to be friends with this woman who was just a Nepali woman, the mother of this family that had the tea shop. And so on one full moon night, she said to me, "Come with me." And so I followed her kind of up through the rice fields into sort of like a little area that wasn't cultivated. And in that little area up on the hill was a beautiful tree, like really huge, magical, big tree. And underneath it were all these Nepali women, and they all had these little clay oil lamps, not candles, but these little, sort of like a clay, like a little dish with a piece of cotton wick and then oil, and they were all lit around the tree, and they sang to the tree. And for me, as an American young woman, really still a teenager, the experience of being under that tree with those women and to be connected to the full moon was huge for me. Like, my family had never related to the moon at all. I don't even remember anyone saying, "It's a beautiful full moon," nothing. And so this connection to the lunar cycle, to the tree, to these women, I think that was really my awakening into the sacred feminine, although it didn't really develop as such until much later when my daughter Kiara died in the middle of the night. How old was I then? 33. And suddenly I felt so alone in this experience of the death of a child within Buddhism. I just felt so alone. I just felt like there was no inspiration to draw from, and I had a longing. I just had a longing for women, and it's only a woman who would know what this is like. What's it like to lose a child? A man can never know that. You've carried this baby under your heart for 9 or 10 months, and it's a female experience. And so that led me to writing my book, Women of Wisdom. And so that led to me committing to the feminine and really awakening to why it's important, not only because of my experience and my needs at that time, but I just started reading a lot of books about research about the feminine and Jungian things, and also the movement that was happening at that time in the early 80s in the United States of women's spirituality, which was like, that in itself was like a whole new idea that there could be something in spirituality that might be different for women. And so as I'm speaking, think about your life and what is the feminine for you? What is the sacred feminine? Have you had experiences of that? Do you long for it? Do you even know what it is? And I think that's been for me one of the big challenges, coming from a patriarchal tradition, a patriarchal government, a patriarchal world, to even know, what do you mean by the feminine and what do you mean by the sacred feminine? I remember years ago now, probably about 15 years ago, I'd been doing these retreats at Spirit Rock called Wisdom Rising, Wild and Wise, Celebrating Women in Buddhism. And we had retreats every year, and it was really the first time that they'd had anything like that there. And Spirit Rock is a Vipassana, a big center in California, in Marin. And there was all this discussion about what is the sacred feminine, and then the women there wanted to start a program for the sacred feminine. But when they were brought into this big council with a lot of men saying, well, what is the sacred feminine? They all were tongue-tied. They were just like, I can't really find the words for it. And that's one of the interesting things to me about the feminine, is when we look for words for it, there's a blank. In a way, it's beyond words, it's beyond concepts. And that's exactly what it says at the beginning of the Prajnaparamita Sutra, which is about the Great Mother, transcendent wisdom. It's unborn, unceasing, and beyond words. is the Great Mother, Prajnaparamita. And so I think that in some ways, when we talk about the sacred feminine, we go into an inchoate world. We go into an experience and a, as you could say, touching of the heart in some way that is really inexpressible. And so how do we express that? How do we talk about it? Well, that's what I've tried to do in my book. And so I'm going to say a few things that I think about the sacred feminine, and then if you feel like it, you could write something too, what's coming to you. For me, the sacred feminine has a lot to do with a connection to the rhythms of life. So that could be the rhythm of the life of getting pregnant and going through pregnancy and having a baby. It could be the rhythm of life of our menstrual moon cycle that's literally tied to the moon. It could be the rhythm of the year, the equinoxes, the solstices, that sense of being connected to this body in this world, and celebrating those rhythms, the sacredness, the moon time, the solstices, the equinoxes, that the rhythm of the moon, that connectedness. And this is really difficult when you think about what women are trying to do now. So many women are trying to have big careers or even little careers, and also perhaps be mothers at the same time, or to live in that world created by men for men, that we're trying to fit ourselves into somehow, so that we can make money and also say that we do something. You know, what do you do? And if you were to say, I'm a mother, that's kind of like, well, that's not really doing anything, right? Really. Little do they know. Doing more than any man does in his job. But anyway, so women are in a position now of having to speed up, disconnect, and achieve. And often this means really losing that connection with their bodies, their connection with the earth, the moon, and so on. And so we get kind of like ripped out of that, and then somehow, how do we even know what we are as women? And so I think one of the important things about the sacred feminine, or to find it and bring her back, is to meet each other. And like this retreat I'm going to have at Kripalu will be all women. And when women kind of all get together, it's really very powerful, because, you know, when there's like, even if it's like one or two men, the women are always taking care of the men, and are they okay? And which is a beautiful thing about women. But when there's no man, they don't have to do that, and they drop their caretaking thing, and they really enter into the communion with each other, which is a beautiful thing. And so when I say I'm committed to the return of the sacred feminine, that's part of it. But it's also when I think of, let's say there's a table, a round table, and all the decisions about everything that's going to happen on the earth, it's taking place at that table. And let's say there's half women and there's half men there. And the women that are there are female-identified women, women who are not trying to be like men or to please men, but really they're holding their full potency as women. What would they be bringing to the table? That's a question that is an interesting question. And one of the things I think about when I think about that is they would be bringing a sense of relationship. they would be concerned about the person next to them and across the table and so on. And not only that, but how whatever decisions are made affect everybody. So I think that there's a natural awareness of interdependence that's connected to the sacred feminine, and that quality of recognizing interdependence or inter-liberation, we could say, because that when we can really be aware of each other, we can really help to liberate each other. So that quality of interdependence means that we care about community, we care about culture. Dave, my husband, used to talk about family culture, creating family culture, which was, to me also, although it came from him as a man, I could see it as a feminine awareness of how do you create a culture in your family, whether it's with certain traditions. Is it what you talk about at dinner? Do you have any rituals? What do you do with music? Do you create plays together? Do you write poetry together? Do you make culture in your family? Or do you think culture is on TV or online or a concert that you go to? So that sense of creating our own culture and being in it together and feeling that's fullness and that's enough, I think that's part of what women have done historically. The other thing, which I talked about a little bit last night, is the sense of embodiment as sacred. And that means that our bodies are sacred, and that is not the experience that we have been taught within patriarchy. We're taught that our bodies are problematic and not beautiful unless they're sort of more or less like man's bodies, and thin and hard and not sinking into the earth and really being present in that softness of the female body is soft. It's naturally soft. It's like a cushion that the baby rests in, that the baby grows in. It's got that natural, sort of like a nest in a way. And so that quality that we have in our bodies and that we can make babies is miraculous. And even if you're a woman who hasn't made babies and never going to make babies, your body is still a miracle as a woman's body. It's so beautiful and so magical. And the most ancient religions in the world, they talked about the sacredness of the female body. They worshipped it. It was the religion. And so that's a beautiful thing to me. And the other thing about sacred feminine is sacred sexuality. Because the body is sacred, why isn't sex? Because it's an expression of our connectedness and it's ecstasy. It's the place where our bodies go into the deepest ecstasy that we have. And nowadays, the way sex is experienced with hooking up and so on, because there isn't that connection of sacredness and of the body and embodiment as sacred and relationship as sacred, it's pretty unsatisfying. And I've heard that now a lot of kids think that actually sex online is better than the real thing because it doesn't have all the complications. And you can just hook up and disconnect. And to me, that's like, it's such a deep loss. And to me also, women are the ones who taught that. I looked pretty intensively at the history of sex, and it used to be that women taught men about sex, and they would be the men would be taken to a sacred prostitute and basically initiated. And so rather than that a woman is taken or she's raped or she's married and forced into something, she's in charge and she's teaching men about it. And men need that. They don't know. But when they get into it and when they get into the worship of the female body, it's so deeply satisfying to them. And the union, the level of union that can take place is quite extraordinary. So those are some ideas about the sacred feminine. And then why? Why now? Well, I mean, we just have to look at our president to know why. But not only that, just the whole situation in the world. We need this. We need this connectedness. We need this sacred sense of union and intimacy. We need a sense of the sacredness of the earth. And we need relationship, which is something that women have always cultivated and been sort of held together by, because as mothers, they need each other, they need to support each other, and so on. And so this quality of the feminine is just so lacking. And one of the things that I feel is it's great for women to be liberated, to be in careers and so on. That's important. But it's also important that women actually know what it means to be a woman and how we are different. We're not the same, and we don't want to be the same. And so how are we different, and how can we cultivate that and bring that difference into full potency and then bring it to the world, offer it into that table or on that table where decisions are being made. So that's some of my ideas. And I feel passionately about this. And as I said in the beginning, in some way, the feminine is beyond words. And so it's hard to put it into words. And also because we haven't known it for so long, how can we talk about it? But anyway, so I'm going to see if there's any questions or thoughts that have come in. Someone's saying, "E maho." Okay, here's some questions. Is the sacred feminine dormant in us until awakened by life experiences, such as illness, divorce, death, sickness? Did you hear that? I'll say it again. Is the sacred feminine dormant in us until awakened by life experiences such as illness, divorce, death, or sickness? I think that's true for a lot of us. And I think for me, I didn't really even wake up to being in a female body until I got pregnant. And then I didn't really wake up to it until I had a child that died. However, it's not true for all of us. Now, many of you have probably been born to mothers who taught you about it and woke you up in it. Hopefully I did that for my children, my daughters. At a young age, I began to take them to sacred places in Italy where we were living and in Greece and so on, and to introduce them to these places and to talk to them about the feminine. So they got it early. I know I'm not your average mother, but I think a lot of women in my generation really did get in touch with it in various ways and probably delivered that. And also, part of this question is illness, divorce, death, and sickness. Is that how we find it? Yes, but we could still go through all that and not find it, right? It's not necessarily going to happen just because we go through difficult life experiences. It just may happen or it may not happen. It's probably about a woman that you meet. And so I want all of you women out there to become that woman who another woman meets and is able to bring her into that, to introduce her to that, to take her into the future of feminine. So we all need to teach. We need to model this, and we need to find it, which is also not easy. And so Wisdom Rising, my new book that's coming out on May 1st, is really about that, and offers this method of the mandala, of the 5 Dakinis that I talked about last night and the night before, or 2 nights before that. That experience of finding it, I'm offering in the book because I feel so passionately about it. And so I guess my short answer is, it doesn't necessarily have to be a difficult experience. It could come in some other way. And sometimes difficult experiences become our initiation, our gate into the sacred feminine. Then there's another question. Is the sacred feminine innate? Does she reside in us? Yes, she does. And, you know, in men as well. Men know her and they long for her like we do. And in India, there's beautiful traditions of really worship of the feminine, where the men are really able to experience that devotion and to let themselves feel it. Because in patriarchy, there's no allowance of the worship of the feminine. Maybe you can be in a religion like Catholic or in forms of Hinduism and so on, where there is a feminine presence, at least, but often it's very limited in terms of what's being offered there. So all of us have it. Women have it more strongly because it's we live it. You know, however unconnected to your rhythms you are. I know that some women are now taking medicine so they don't have a period. They don't have any rhythm of the moon in their bodies. They cut themselves off from that, which is pretty sad to me. To me, you know, when I was bleeding, I always felt I was in my power. Yeah, that's a whole other subject. We should talk about that. But yes, it is innate in all of us, men and women, and more strongly in women. But it's almost like because we live in patriarchy, it needs to be awakened. Okay, so I think this is an answer that somebody sent. I'm gonna read that. Why is the sacred feminine important? Is the question that I asked. The world is so out of balance. It is essential we claim our female strength in all of its glory and beauty. It's time to shift the paradigm and heal ourselves and our world. Rationalism, reductionism, objectivism, masculine energy have thrown us out of balance. I'm so thankful a woman of your profound prominence is addressing this. That's really well said. Really well said. I'm going to read it one more time because it's pretty articulate. I'm not sure who wrote this, but I'll read it again. The world is so out of balance. It is essential we claim our feminine strength in all of its glory and beauty. It's time to shift the paradigm and heal ourselves and our world. It really is time. Rationalism, reductionism, objectivism, masculine energy have thrown us out of balance. We don't have to say that again. Yes, not only thrown us out of balance, but it's thrown us to the brink of extinction. It's extreme. The state of the world is extreme. And here's a comment. Most spiritual traditions relate the lunar energy to the feminine, but there are traditions, like the transmissions from Chogyal Namkhe Norbu, who relate the lunar energy to the masculine and the solar to the feminine. Is there an explanation for this reverse? Yes, there is, and it's not Namkhe Norbu's tradition, it's Tantra. It's Buddhist Tantra. In all of Buddhist Tantra, the feminine is solar, and the masculine is lunar. And to me, this is really, it was very refreshing when I learned this. And of course, as a Tibetan Buddhist, we live that experience. And I think it has to do with the power, the Shakti, the energy of the feminine. And that in the Tantric tradition, the feminine was seen as the active force. And even in terms of the sexual images, the woman was on top often, in Hindu Tantra certainly. And so to me, it's not like, oh, it's lunar. And that's usually, oh yes, you're a woman, you're lunar, you're feminine, you're receptive, you're passive. No, we also have this other aspect, which is vivid, strong, active energy. And to me, the beauty of the way it's expressed in Tantra is that we don't have to be stuck in this one thing. I have talked quite a bit tonight about the moon and that connection we have in our body, which is so beautiful, but I love that I can be solar as well. And that's also why I talk in my book about the fierce feminine, because also that's been very limited. Like, we've been only allowed to be really sweet and gentle when we're sacred, you know, and the Dakinis are not. They're fierce and they're wild and they're sexual and they're spiritual. And for me, that gave me permission to be a Buddhist because I couldn't really have done it otherwise. But when I found out about the Dakinis, I was like, okay, I can do this. And also that I could own sexuality as sacred, which to me is very important. Yeah, so I think that's what we have for tonight. We've been together about a half hour. And so, hi everybody. Nice to see you. Dasha Cochran. Yeshe Matthews. It's beautiful. I'm doing this every night now until my book launch on May 1st. I might miss the 29th because we have an all-day practice. And sending you all lots of love and seeing people's names come by. Yeah, it's nice to see you. And these transmissions, all of them are up on my Facebook page afterwards. And so if you liked it and you want to share it with a friend, you can do that. And yeah, we also will have an online course of Wisdom Rising that will be produced. It's being produced now and will be ready a little bit after my book comes out. So that's another way you can kind of dive in more deeply to the material that will be in the book. Yeah, Joep van Heck from Holland. She's always there. So I'll be in Holland, you know, at the in October. So Zokchomo, Teresa George. Lovely to be with you. I can't say everyone's name. Let's dedicate the merit of our time together tonight and look forward to hearing more from you. And I'll be back tomorrow night for a half hour. Okay, lots of love. And let's offer any benefit, any good vibes, any merit that we've accumulated together tonight out to all beings everywhere. Thanks, everybody. I love you.